Hey guys, welcome to the Gibby No Sports podcast. I'm your host, Caleb Gibson, also known as Big Gibby. I am with my little brother, Seth, aka Little Gibby. We started this podcast as a way to talk sports. We're both super fans. We watch a lot of football, baseball, golf, basketball, table tennis, you name it. We watch a lot of stuff, and we wanted an avenue to share our thoughts about certain things with the outside world. We get heated at times when we debate things, but that's okay. We're both brothers. We love each other. Today's topic of conversation is going to be the college football playoff. We've extended the format this year for the first time ever. We went from the 4-team playoff to the 12-team playoff. There have been a lot of concerns about who gets in, who doesn't get in, who gets buys, who doesn't get buys. We're gonna talk about all that here pretty shortly. But Seth, what do you think about this 12-team college football playoff? Do you like this format better? Do you think the committee got it right with the teams that are in it? And if not, what are your issues with it?
The format is way better than what the previous 4-team playoff was. Obviously, the more teams makes it better. I think since it's the first year, there's a lot of hiccups, and they're starting to realize that hey, maybe this rule could have been a little bit better. So I think they're going to rethink and relook at some of these rules and like the qualifications that you have for seeding and how you get in. But it's the first time they've done it, so I can't really complain about it. You definitely see some little loopholes or holes in the system that you can work on, but I'm actually super excited for it. It kind of has almost an NFL feel to it, as far as like the format. You're going to find out who's the best team. It's not just 4 teams; it's the whole field of them. So you got to play every game. So
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. We're both high school coaches. We've both been around high school football our entire lives. And I think most football fans wanted to see more of an extended, expanded playoff. So you have other teams that maybe are on the outside looking in every year because they're not one of the top 2 or 3 ranked teams getting a chance to play for the national title. Now you have, realistically, you have probably 20 to 25 teams every year. They're going to be on that bubble that have a chance to earn their way into the football playoff and have a chance to then, play 3 or 4 games to get into that national championship. And I think we're going to see over the course of this playoff, whether they change it or not, like you just said, the format's probably going to change. I think 2026 is the next time that it can be changed. So we're stuck with this playoff the way it's set up until at least until then. But I still think in the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to see somebody get to Natty that is not one of the number 1 or number 2 ranked teams in the nation because they played so well later in the year and it allowed them to get to the national championship. Somebody's going to go on a run. We're going to see it. We see it all the time in college basketball with their expanded playoff. We see it all the time in high school football here in Texas. There's always a Cinderella team that seems to start playing well in the last few months of the season and surprises everybody. So with that being said, we'll get into the actual matchups for the college football playoff. Starting with the very first game is tonight. It's Indiana at Notre Dame at 7 p.m. This game is being played in South Bend, Indiana. It's going to be a snowstorm.
mm-hmm.
Seth, how do you see this one playing out?
It's going to be cold. I don't think it's going to bother either team, the weather-wise, but I think it does play a big part for Notre Dame in the way they run the football and stuff like that. It's going to be really tough. Indiana was one of those teams that has everyone thinking about the playoff format. Are they as tough as some other opponents in the SEC? Indiana, kind of almost similar story of this year. They kind of came out of nowhere. But they're a good football team. With the 12-team playoff, I think that's great for teams like that to get in because then it kind of like is the March Madness bracket to where a team like that could get on a run and get hot and show themselves that hey, they're worthy of the spot in the playoff. But tonight's game, I really see Notre Dame coming out on top. I think they're just a little bit too physical. I think Marcus Freeman has something to prove. I think he's going to have his guys on the right track. I don't know if you saw their hype video on X they just posted today.
Yeah, Notre Dame. If you have not seen it, go check it out. They dropped the most fire hype video of all time. I'm not a Notre Dame football fan, but if I were, like, I loved that as a football fan. It was sick, and I'm always down for some young Jeezy.
I saw a tweet about it that it was some some student in a classroom that went up to the Notre Dame social media team and was like, "Hey, I got something that y'all might like," and they gave him a chance, and he made that video. So,
oh wow, I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
So,
yeah, I feel kind of like you just said. I mean, Indiana, the whole shtick around them the whole entire year was their strength of schedule was terrible. They never played anybody until they played Ohio State, which propelled their strength of schedule, to way higher than it would have been. You take Ohio State off their schedule, and it's one of the worst in the country. And when they did play Ohio State, they had a chance to prove everybody wrong, and they didn't. They laid an egg. They got blown out.
Yeah.
And we know Ohio State's a good football team, but when you're in their situation and you get limited opportunities to showcase how good your football team is, you've got to take advantage of them. And they did not. Like, they got embarrassed.
And that's why people are afraid of sometimes, like, of this format. Like, are they really deserving of this spot? And they're going to find out tonight. Hopefully, it's not a blowout. Notre Dame's a 7-point favorite as far as Vegas odds. So that's
and Notre Dame did lose to Northern Illinois. So let's not forget that. Yeah, I really do think that Notre Dame is the better football team. Since that stumble against Northern Illinois, they've been one of the best football teams in the country. They're in a unique situation every year with this playoff because they're not a part of a conference, so they play, a schedule that is basically makeshift every year. But they do a good job of scheduling opponents from the ACC, the Big Ten, all over the country, and they just win. They have a winning pedigree. I do like their head coach, Marcus Freeman. I think he does a great job getting the best out of his roster every single year. And I do expect Notre Dame to win tonight. I think it's going to be close because of the weather. I don't know if it's going to be a 7-point swing like Vegas has it, because you know how crazy the snow games can get. But I do think they will establish the run game. They'll do a good job of controlling the tempo of the game. And their defense is going to get enough stops against Indiana's offense, I think, to help keep them on top.
I agree. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it'll be a lot closer than what people think, just because I think it's more. I don't know if it's going to be nerves hit in for both sides because it's the first game of the actual playoff, so that does play a factor into it because these are college kids. But it's going to be. I think the weather's going to play a part. Maybe not throwing much, and both teams like to run the ball, so low scoring game.
Yeah. All right, so the next game we have SMU at Penn State. That's at 11 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. Penn State's the home team. They're another team that, like Notre Dame and Indiana, they've won the games they should have on their schedule. They played a really close game with Ohio State and lost. SMU is a team that, dominated their schedule for most of the year until they played Clemson last week or 2 weeks ago in the ACC championship game and lost a close one there. How do you see this one playing out?
This is the one game that I feel like is going to be a blowout. I think Penn State's 9.5-point favorites for Vegas. Saw a thing where SMU hasn't played a game under 60-something degree weather the entire season, and it's going to be snowing, really, really cold in Penn State. It's a whiteout game. I think Penn State is a really good football team. SMU, I feel like, is one of those teams that benefited from the format of the playoffs more than the actual talent level. I think Penn State's just going to out athlete them and out-talent them all over the football field. I think they're going to out-dominate them on the offensive line, defensive line, and that's one of the strengths, actually, is the D-line for Penn State, and the weakness for SMU is their offensive line. So I think that's going to be – because, one, they might not be able to throw the ball how bad the weather is.
Mm-hmm.
If they try to run the ball, then it's going to be tough. So I think this game is going to be just like Vegas has it. I think it's at least 2 scores, in my opinion. I think you'll find out real fast if it's going to be out of control. So I hope it's not, but I see all the games that are played this weekend in the first round. This one is the one you got to if I had money, I'm probably putting it on the Vegas bet.
Yeah, I agree with you. SMU is the one team I feel like everybody wanted to jump out of the playoff after they lost to Clemson.
Yeah.
The 2 of the bubble teams, you had Alabama and South Carolina, and a lot of people thought that either one of those teams should have leapfrogged SMU, and I kind of agree with that. I mean, if Alabama and SMU were playing this weekend, I'm pretty sure the money would be on Alabama.
Either one. If South Carolina or Alabama played them, they'd be the favorite to win.
But, I mean, that's the committee for a long time has stated they're going to place an emphasis on teams that play for their conference championship. And, SMU, you can say helped their case by playing a close game with Clemson. And we're going to talk about Clemson here in a little bit. But, I see the game going the exact way you just said. SMU is a spread offense. They want to throw the ball. They want to create space on the perimeter. Doing that against a team like Penn State, who plays a lot of man coverage, who stuffs the box to stop runs, it's going to be very hard for them to be efficient in the weather and against the Penn State defense. I'm with you on this one. I think Penn State wins.
As a football coach, in cold weather, especially in possibly snow, all that quick route stuff that those receivers are going to be running ain't going to work. So it's hard to keep your footing and stuff like that. It's going to be tough game.
All right, so on to the next game. This is the one I've been waiting for. Okay. We got Texas hosting Clemson. You got the ACC champ coming in to take on the SEC runner-up. I'm a homer. I'm a Texas homer, so you already know how I think this game's going to go. Give me your thoughts first, and I'll tell you kind of how I feel about it.
I do think Texas is going to win. I think this needs to be a statement game for them. I don't need them to be laying an egg. I need them to come out with some high energy, focus after that, I want to say brutal loss, but that definitely was a dramatic loss, and that could derail a season just because it's such a big momentum game, and you had the game, probably should have won the game. But I think Texas is the better. I think they're going to athlete them. They're going to have way better players. Dabo Swinney is known, and Clemson is known this year for not going to the transfer portal for their players. And they're trying to stay true to their culture and their program. I just think Texas has too many studs on both sides of the ball. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it'll be a lot lower scoring than people think. But I'd like to see Sarkisian come out swinging. Like I want them to make a statement, like, "Hey, we're Texas. We're in this sucker. We play for the SEC championship game. We're one of the big dogs in this side of the bracket." That's what I want them to do, and I hope they do it, and I think they can. So,
yeah, dude, I'm with you. Texas is the one team that I watch every single snap of every single game. I do try to watch all these other teams as much as possible. I watch highlights. I watch film breakdown from analysts on YouTube and things like that. But Texas, I watch with my own eyes. I see every single snap of every single game. And you're right. I mean, I feel confident in Texas winning tomorrow solely because it's not Georgia. For whatever reason, Georgia schematically is the only team that has been able to
we know why they
really kind of stifle.
we'll get into that in a little bit. We know why they lose to Georgia, and there's one reason why they lose to Georgia.
Well,
We'll get into that later.
we disagree on that, but
We'll get into that.
as far as tomorrow goes, Texas is the better team. They have the better roster. They have perhaps the best defense in the country, hands down.
Yeah.
If they can get back to running the ball effectively, the way they have with Wisner, then they'll control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. They'll take deep shots. Sark has already come out and said they still have not shown a large part of their offense, the stuff they work on week to week, because they're saving it for moments like this. It's almost like they've done just enough in every single game to win. ESPN has this metric called game control, and Texas is number 2 in the nation in game control, meaning they just take control of games. They're never really in trouble of losing any games this year, maybe other than the Georgia games, obviously, if they lost both of those. But you could argue in that in the SEC championship game,
they should have
like
won.
you said, they should have won. There was a couple plays that if it goes Texas's way, they're the SEC champ.
Missed open receivers. A lot of times we could have had a ball. One was fumbled. We just didn't recover it for whatever reason. That's just football sometimes. But I think there's one reason why they lost that game. But it is what it is. Let's move on to the next game.
Okay. Next we have perhaps what I think has the potential to be the best game of the first 4, and that's Tennessee at Ohio State. 2 very conflicting styles of play there. But Ohio State does get to host Tennessee. It's the 9 versus 8 matchup. That's being played at 7 o'clock, like I said, at Ohio State. So tell me how you see that one going.
So this is Ohio State's favorite to win. 7.5 points, which is ridiculous in my opinion. I think it's just because they're at home and Vegas loves Ohio State for whatever reason every single year. But this is the one game I feel like the underdog is going to win as far as Vegas bets. I think Tennessee is going to go into Ohio State and upset them. And this is what I feel like is going to happen. Tennessee has probably the best defensive line in the entire nation, probably besides Georgia or Texas. But Tennessee, as far as the stat on ESPN, has the number 1 defensive line. Ohio State recently has been struggling on offensive line. They have an offensive lineman that's hurt, that can't play, that started, I think, 11 games for them this year, and he's not playing this weekend. So that's going to play a huge part of it. The weather's going to be really bad. I just think Tennessee is going to run the ball, control the ball, and then when Ohio State gets on offense, they're not going to be able to do anything. That's what I think is going to happen. And also Ryan Day, I think he has to win. They've had a good year, obviously, but the expectations have not been met, especially losing to Michigan again. So he's on. I want to say necessarily he's on the hot seat, but he needs to win. He cannot go first round exit. If he goes first round exit, there could be some stories happening pretty soon.
Yeah, Ryan Day is probably my least favorite person in all of college football.
He's benefited from having probably the best roster because they have NFL guys on both sides of the ball.
Oh yeah, I was reading an article the other day. Can't remember who did it. I think it was I can't remember who it was, but they were ranking the rosters that are in the 12-team playoff in terms of 4-star recruits and 5-star recruits, and Ohio State is number 2 behind Georgia. So they have, by roster construction, they've got the second best roster out of everybody in the college football playoff, and they have not been able to win the big ones.
Yeah. They just underperform for whatever reason.
And they had the 1-point loss to Oregon, and that was a big loss. But it was a close game, and it was neck and neck the entire game. And Oregon exploits a rule. Dan Lanning's fabulous coach. We'll talk about Oregon here in a little bit.
Next Cowboys coach.
But Ohio State loses that one, and then you have the rivalry game. It's Michigan. Michigan's been an up and down team the entire year, and you score 13 points. I think it was. or
There's
10. I
a
mean,
rivalry game, and that's a big game, big time matchup. So those kind of games, but there was no excuse for them to lose that game.
yeah.
Like they should have won that game by 2 touchdowns.
But
So
as far as this matchup goes, Tennessee, Ohio State, I'm with you there. Like
I think Tennessee's going to win.
I think Tennessee pulls off the upset. I
Yeah.
think their defense is what wins the game for them. I can see it being a low score. I could see it being like a 20-17 type of game.
It's going to be low scoring for sure. I think
But
Tennessee is going to.
the D line for Tennessee is going to get after McCord. He's going to make him run for his life. And on the back end, Tennessee has a really talented secondary. Shout out Jermon McCoy, White House, Texas. He's one of the best DBs in the SEC. I think he's got a chance to make a statement game and national television in front of every college football fan in the country is going to be watching that game tomorrow night. But I'm with you. So we're on the same page for all of the first 4 matchups. We've got 3 favorites winning, and we got 1 underdog winning.
This goes back to the format, which I love a lot, because most of these, like in the playoffs, it's usually at a neutral site, but they're mostly indoors. So the weather doesn't play any factor. That's why you would see a lot of shootouts. But now it's like the NFL playoffs, like where you have to go to Arrowhead or Bill Stadium or play Pittsburgh, whatever it is. Like you're going to a tough environment. Like it's going to people don't realize how cold some of these games are fixing to be, because a lot of these good football teams are up north. It's going to be snowing. It's going to be cold. Like a lot of these games that we feel like in the past playoffs or past bowl games that you see a 40, 50-point game. You almost see it all the time. I just don't see that happening. I think the teams that have a good O line, good D line, can run the ball, are the ones that are going to end up like, okay, these games are perfect for them. So
yeah, you're right. And I had that conversation with a kid the other day in class about that exact thing. It's almost like it's better to not be one of the top 4 teams and have a bye, because those next round games are going to be indoors in an indoor stadium, and now you truly get a playoff experience in front of your home crowd if you're hosting. And like you said, weather can play a factor. So if you're an underdog and you're having to go on the road, like that could play in your favor. I think us having home playoff games in college football is what we all want to see.
Yeah.
All right, so kind of going into the next round. So, Tuesday, December 31st, it would be the quarterfinals. The first matchup there would be Boise State, the Pac-12, or not Pac-12 winner. Pac-12, right? Like, what conference are they in now? I don't even remember.
Who are we talking about? Sorry.
Boise State.
Huh?
Boise State.
They're the Pac-12.
Yeah. So Pac-12 hosting who we believe to be Penn State that next round. How do you see that one going? That's the Fiesta Bowl.
This is what it goes back to. We keep going back to the format. Penn State got the lucky draw. On this side of the bracket for Penn State, like until they run into what we think is probably going to be Georgia, like they're going to have way better athletes, just way more talent on the field, and they're just, nothing's really going to give them a test. I don't feel like the Boise State can give them a test. They have, the running back that probably should have won Heisman, but he's going to run into a legit team. So he's going to have a time to shine and prove that he's worth all that. But they haven't faced anybody like Penn State. Penn State is a legit team. They're going to come in there and.
Well, they played Oregon earlier in the year, and he had a good game against Oregon, but he was about the only one that did.
Only one that did, and then you can't do that. One person can't win the game. Penn State I don't think Boise State's going to stop them. So if Penn State can stop Boise State 3 or 4 times, I think that's the game right there. Because I don't think Penn State will be stopped. Really, to be honest, I think their O line is just way more powerful. That's what comes back in the day with Nick Saban and Kirby Smart with the Georgia and Alabama teams. Is like the O line is just different. The D line is just different. It's a different level of football in the SEC, like top of the ranks
Yeah.
against these other conferences. And
I
that's why
do want to see Genty break Barry Sanders' record. I think he's 169 yards or something like that shy. Maybe it's 139. All I know is it's 100 and something yards that he's shy of Barry Sanders' record. So I would love to see that kid.
if it's 160, I just don't, unless you get some break off runs, because I feel like they're going to be down and down early. So I don't know if they'll stay true to that or not. I don't know if they'll panic or stay true to their brand, but I could definitely see Penn State getting up early and not letting off the gas.
Yeah. I'm trying to look at how many yards he needed. Yeah, he needs 132 yards. So that I think that's doable.
That's doable. 160 is close. Like that's
I'm
a
with you.
lot.
If it was 160, I'd be a little worried about it, but 132, I think, is a number he could get.
Hell, what do I
So
know?
if
I'm betting he's probably going to hit it over. So
all right, so the next matchup that Wednesday, that'd be January 1st, so New Year's Day. You've got Arizona State against who we believe to be Texas, the winner of that Texas Clemson matchup in the Peach Bowl. That's going to be at 12 o'clock, and that's noon on January 1st. We kind of mentioned already, Texas is by far going to be the favorite in that game. Arizona State did win the Big 12, and that's a big deal. It's their first year in the conference. I think they were 3-9 last year as a team, and they were able to flip the script. I really like the running back, the Scatterbo kid, but for the reasons we just mentioned with Boise State and Penn State, Texas is going to have the advantage on both the offensive and defensive line. I really struggle, or I think Arizona State's really going to struggle to move the ball consistently on Texas's defense. The only thing that I'm worried about in that game is Texas going to look past Arizona State, for a potential matchup with Oregon or Tennessee. I think that's the trap you can fall into in terms of when it comes to that opponent. But Texas under Sarkisian has not really showed that. They do a good job preparing each week for the opponent they're about to play. They're not Mike Elko and accidentally slipping up and saying somebody else's name in a press conference.
yeah,
I do not think they'll overlook the Sun Devils, but I think they're the weakest team in the field by far.
besides SMU, I think they're the weakest team.
I think SMU would beat Arizona State.
You think so?
Yeah,
Well,
especially neutral site, neutral field. If it was Texas playing them in the Peach Bowl, I think SMU walks away with that one.
it's just I would love, since Texas has left the Big 12, I'd love for them to go to the Big 12 champions and just destroy them and show them hey, there's a reason why we went to the SEC to join the bigger brands. I think it's gonna be a wake up call. The only thing I worry about Texas is what you just said, is that they overlook them and look ahead into the future. I don't think they will. I don't think Sarkisian has kind of gave us any precedent that they will do stuff like that. But uh, it's a matchup where they definitely just got to go in there and know they're the better team and play like they're the better team and make it a statement. Get a little healthy, get up early. Do like they did back in the day with Alabama when they did the playoff games when they were in their prime, like they would sit out a couple kids in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it'd be that bad of a game, but we hope so.
Yeah. All right, so the next you have Oregon, who's on the bye. They win the Big Ten in their first year in the Big Ten. They're going to host who we believe to be Tennessee, but it'd be the winner of the Ohio State-Tennessee game in the Rose Bowl. How do you see that one panning out?
I think Oregon is one of the best teams in here, obviously with their number one ranking. I think they're well coached. They're
the only undefeated team this year in college football.
They're undefeated. I don't see any reason why they're going to have a hiccup this game. Dan Lanning is known to be a motivator coach. Like he gets his guys ready, not on the field, but like outside the field. And I just don't see. I have Tennessee winning that game against Ohio State. I just don't see Tennessee matching up well against Ohio State because unlike Ohio State, I think Ohio State's one of their strengths is their O line, and if they just mellow with Tennessee's D line, a walk in the park. I feel like I think they're better coached. Hopefully, Dan Lannon is future Cowboys coach or whatever. But I just think Dan Lanning's gonna have the Ducks ready, and I think they want to. I think they want it all. So uh, I have Oregon Ducks win that game.
Yeah, I think obviously Oregon. I think is whether it's Ohio State or Tennessee. I think Oregon's advancing. I just worry about the fact that it's going to be now. By the time they play that game, they'll have not played a football game in what 2.5, 3, almost 3 weeks.
That does play a factor. So
yeah, and I would hate that as a player and a coach having to wait that long before your next opponent, and you're spending these next 2 weeks. You don't know who you're preparing for, because you don't know who's going to win that game. So
yeah,
as a coach, if it's me, I'm having to evaluate and analyze both opponents, and I can't devote all of my time, all of my effort into studying just one of them because we don't know who it's going to be. So then when you do find out, you have, what is that, about almost a 10-day window to get ready. So I mean, that's plenty of time, but you're still just kind of sitting there and your kids have not, played in a football game for that long. You might have a tendency to start slow.
and also this goes back to the format again, to where like Oregon, the number one seed, kind of gets screwed on the seeding of this because their side of the bracket obviously has the way better teams, in my opinion. Like Ohio State, Tennessee, and Texas, either one of those teams could potentially upset Oregon. I don't think it's. We'll get to the Texas Oregon game in a second, but all three of those teams, like that's a brutal matchup for like Oregon has to go through all those gauntlets of teams just to make it to the championship. And that goes back to the format to where if they keep the seed in this way, I mean, potentially you're going to run into like this year where Oregon's the number one seed, but their side of the bracket, like they're not rewarded for getting number one seed. Like they're in a struggle.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of what Dan Lanning was. He was asked about that, I think, on the Pat McAfee show, about a potential, opponent as the number one seed. How does he feel about it? And he said his guys told him, just put the ball in the parking lot. We'll play whoever. So his guys are ready to go. Like you said, he's a master motivator. He's a great coach. I love watching Oregon play football. They're probably the team that I've watched the second most this year in terms of just all their snaps, especially on the defensive side. I've studied Dan Lanning's defense from his time when he was a defense coordinator at Georgia up until now. They do a great job on the defensive side of the ball. They do a great job of taking away an opponent's strengths, and Tennessee, their strength is spreading the field and getting the ball out quick and running vertical choice routes down the field. I think they'll do a good job of matching up well, especially in the secondary with Tennessee's receivers. It's can they run the ball effectively enough on Tennessee's defensive front? And if they can, and I think they'll be able to do it enough. And then Dylan Gabriel is just so precise with the football.
Yeah.
He can pick apart defenses.
I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be a good, a good NFL. I don't think he'll be a great NFL quarterback, but I think he's going to be a good NFL. I think he's just though. If you can throw the ball accurately, you can be a good quarterback in the NFL.
And he really, and he probably gets tired of hearing the comparisons, but he's Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah,
honestly.
and Tua's not a great quarterback, but he's
they're both Hawaiian kids. They're both lefties.
Yeah.
And it's not just that comparison that I'm drawing it to. It's just
somebody
really good.
Will draft him and put a system around him.
Oh yeah, he will succeed in just about any place he goes to. I think. And he's a winner, and he's done a good job of keeping Oregon's offense constantly on the move. They're almost never behind the chains. They're a great third down team. And I think they win that.
In the nation.
Yeah, So there you go.
And number one third down efficiency in the nation. So,
all right, so let's jump to the last of that quarterfinal matchup, and that'd be Georgia
I don't think
versus
we,
Notre Dame
I
or
don't think we have to
Indiana.
talk about this very long.
That would be in the
Georgia,
Sugar Bowl, January 1st, the New Year's Day,
Georgia
that
is
last
rolling
game.
through them like melted butter. They're going through them with ease. Either one of them, like they have the easiest cakewalk I've ever seen as far as any kind of playoff bracket on any sport. They're none of these teams I'm looking at right now on the bracket. Like none of these teams are going to stand a chance. They like
Yeah.
it's going to be an act of God for. They just don't match up. None of these teams in this bracket, in my opinion, match up against Georgia. Has number one.
So you're
Like
not at all worried about, because it's being reported today that Carson Beck's probably not going to play, at least in the first round game
I thought the
or the
backup
quarterfinal
quarterback.
game.
I don't know. I forgot his name. The backup quarterback did a better job against Texas. I think if Beck stays healthy, I think Texas wins that game.
Yeah.
Am I wrong about that?
I
He came
mean, they definitely had, they had what, like 90 yards at halftime,
when
I think,
Beck. I don't like Beck's
before he,
attitude.
before
I
Beck
don't
got
think
hurt.
I don't think he actually really cares too much about it. Uh, the backup quarterback when he came in gave them life, and he was making good throws, especially on third down, and they were better.
Stockton,
They
Gunnar
were better.
Stockton is
They
his
were better
name.
in the second half. So uh, I think they're
Yeah,
even better.
and like Texas, they have the strength of their team really is their defense. You
They're
know,
so good on
and
defense.
now that that Monken, their offensive coordinator, has, like we said, 2 weeks now to prepare as if Gunnar
Yeah,
Stockton's going to be the starter. They're gonna do a lot more like quarterback design run game. Kind of like they did against Texas in the second half of the SEC championship. I see them effectively moving the ball on Notre Dame's defense, and like you said, earlier, that game's going to be one of the trenches for Georgia up
EP
front.
might have 150 yards rushing and 150 yards receiving. I mean,
He might, yeah.
he's so good. It's just I just don't see a game until they face like an Oregon or a Texas. I don't think nobody's gonna give them a matchup
Yeah.
as long as Barron they stay healthy. So and Kirby Smart is looking to take the throne officially from any kind of second guessers out there
Yeah.
that not their time. So
So semifinals, okay, that would bring us with Oregon and Texas, and then you
Mhm.
have Georgia and Penn State on the other side. Let's talk about the Texas Oregon matchup first.
this is the one when people are gonna be like, "Oh, we're homers." I I want to go Oregon so bad. I think this is a really good game as far as like coaching. I think Sarkisian and Dane Lanning are kind of neck and neck on coaching. I think Dane Lanning's more of like a motivator guy, and he's defensive minded. So it's going to be a really cool battle of Sarkisian versus Dane Lanning and see who can outcoach one another. I just think Texas has something to prove, and I truly believe at that point the big dog is going to be at quarterback for Texas. So. Uh, So this is what I think. I think Arch Manning at some point is going to take over the reins during the playoff. You might totally you probably totally disagree with that, but I say if Arch Manning is playing, I think they win. If Ewers is playing, I think they lose. But I think at some point in this playoff, Manning's going to take the reins. I think Sarkisian's going to follow in Saban, his former boss, his footsteps, and go with the Tua option because I think that gives them the best chance to win. I don't. I know you disagree, but I just don't see how you see the Georgia games and you see how when they finally get some other team that can athlete them on both sides, like you need someone that can propel them forward and give them better options. I think Ewers is great with what he's like, kind of like Jalen Hurts. He's great with what he's got, but when it comes down to it, when they play in Oregon or in Georgia, they're going to struggle because they need a little bit more tick. And
Yeah.
I think Sarkisian is going to show us a little something and
I
move on.
agree with you in terms of I think we're going to see a lot more of Arch Manning in the
I hope
playoff,
so.
but
I
I
hope
think
so.
it's going to be in the form of their 16-wheeler package is what they call it, especially in the red zone area, kind of like they did against A&M. I think instead of starting drives in the red zone with Quinn, they get into the red area or the upper red area, we're going to see Arch trotting out there, and we're going to see a lot more quarterback run game type stuff, as well as some of the RPO stuff that Sark likes to run with
You got
Quinn.
you got to, and that's no knock on Quinn, but
Let's not forget though that Quinn threw for almost 400 yards against Georgia. There were a couple of key drops in that game that cost us touchdowns.
there was a lot of key throws that he missed or could have seen. But
Well,
it's one of those
every
things.
quarterback misses throws.
I think he was panicking a little bit. I think his if you're a quarterback and your confidence is shaken, it's a whole different ball. Like, look at that Kirk Cousins with the Falcons. His confidence is shot. He looks like he's a shell of himself. Even like Aaron Rodgers, like once your confidence is gone as a quarterback, it's just hard to recover. And
Yeah.
uh, I
I
don't want to say
think I think
different.
the difference in that game is Texas will be able to run the ball more effectively against Oregon than they are against Georgia.
Yes, 100%.
And I
And
think
that's
that
why
game needs to be a 250-yard passing and a 200-yard rushing type of game for the Longhorns to come out on
if we
top.
can get play action working against Oregon, it'll be tough for Oregon to match. But I'm confident our defense will be able to will game plan against Oregon and Gabriel and them. Uh, if we can just take advantage on offense against Oregon, I'm saying they become Texas fans.
And a lot
If
of those guys that are back for Texas defense, they want another shot at Dylan Gabriel. Because if you remember last year, he was a Sooner, and
yeah,
they came back to beat us in the Cotton Bowl in that game. I guarantee you, Jade Barron and those defensive guys are licking their chops, ready to get after Dylan
well,
Gabriel again.
I think they're going through this whole playoff game or whole playoff bracket thinking like, hey, we want the revenge game on Georgia.
Uh,
Like,
so let's just go ahead and get into that. We both think Georgia's going to beat Penn State,
yeah, it won't be close. It won't be close.
which
So
leads us to round 3 of Texas Georgia in the national championship. Which when they start the year, who would have thought they were going to play 3 times potentially? But that's what it's looking like to me. If both teams take care of business and do what they're supposed to do, we're going to get a third matchup. I don't think that's ever happened before in college football history. And surely for Texas, third time's the charm. You got to imagine
I just
Texas would
don't
be tough
think
to beat 3 times.
if Arch plays, I think they will. If not, I think Georgia will be on too much of a hot streak with so much confidence they beat them twice. I, Texas has to do something a little bit different. I feel like they were successful, in the first half, and the second half of the second Georgia game, there was 2 fumbles there in the red zone area where we had a chance to get the ball, and if we get the ball, it's over.
Yeah, and the ball bounces right back into
Ball bounces right back.
Georgia's player hands.
It'd be tough. I think Georgia's D line is so stinking good, and they're so fast. That's what I think Quinn kind of gets frustrated with. It's like he don't have that time to sit back and because he can be a really good pocket passer and he can go through his progressions, but when it speeds up, because that's an NFL D line, there's no time to think. You have to know where you're going with the football beforehand.
Yeah,
And the thing with that, Texas receivers against other teams are able to get open quite often. But Kirby Smart
yeah,
and
and
his
Sark loves the screen game, and fast screens, tunnel screens, jailbreak screens. They run all kinds of screens, and you don't do that against Georgia secondary. They do such a good job of playing on the perimeter, being physical on the perimeter. They don't pop screens against Georgia, and
I
that's
feel
a
like
big
with
part of their
screens, though,
offense.
if you have fast defensive ends and fast linebackers, it's kind of hard to do it because they can get across the field really freaking fast. And Georgia has they have a DN Caleb that's 6'5", 310 pounds, and he runs a 4.53. That's what are you supposed to do? That's a Miles Garrett out there on the field, So uh, if you're going to
They
run
threw
just
for almost 400 yards against them last time, though, and that's what gives me hope that they're going to find a way to run the ball a little bit better in the third matchup. And so, yeah, I am being a homer right now, but I think if they play a third time, Texas wins.
I'm not trying to be a homer. I truly believe. I think Arch Manning is going to play. Uh, I think they'll just run the ball in Oregon, and I think they're going to get play action against Oregon. That's why I think they'll get past Oregon. I think if they just establish play action, they'll be fine. It'll be indoors, so it's not. It's both teams will have a chance on offense to score some high points. I just think Texas I think is just a little bit more is better. Defense can win you championship games. We've seen that in the past, but with Georgia and Alabama being so dominant on defense. But when you have a really good offense, you're gonna. We've seen in these playoffs, you're gonna have to score at least 25 or more probably to win a playoff game when you're playing these high moments. I just don't think Oregon's going to score that much on Texas because Texas has held a lot of their opponents to. They have their number one scoring defense as well. Texas does. So, but Oregon, look,
if Texas wins the Natty, we're not going to look back and say it's because Quinn Ewers, carried the team on his back and shouldered the load and won the Natty for us. It's going to be the defense. Like, we're going to lean on the defense, and especially if we rematch with Georgia again, I see it being another low-scoring type of game. The way the defense played in the SEC championship against Georgia gives me total confidence in them moving forward in the playoff. They can beat anybody because of that defense. And all it takes is for us to get hot on offense, run the ball effectively, Sarkisian to scheme up each of the defensive schemes that we're going to see. And I feel really good about Texas coming out on top.
With that being said, I think Texas, I truly believe Texas will make it to the championship, but I also believe that Georgia is going to win it all. I think the third straight game won't make a difference. I think they're just so good. I think them losing games in the year was just a fluke. I don't see how they lost. I blame Carson Beck for those games. I don't think he's very good. He's almost like what's that quarterback? He's like AJ McCarron for Alabama. That's what I think he is. Like their team is so good around them. Just get there and don't screw up. That's basically what you needed to do. So I think Georgia will win it all. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, I think if Archman does play, I think that gives us a better chance, and I could see us winning. But if I had to put money on it, I think Georgia wins, and I think they're going to win. It's so hard to bet against Kirby Smart. It's so hard to bet.
I agree, and I love Kirby Smart, and I think Georgia's a great football team. They're great, obviously a great program, but I think Texas wins the third matchup. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that Georgia can beat a team like Texas three times in a year.
Really not.
No.
I hope Texas wins, but I just don't see anybody beating Georgia. I think they're just too good. They remind me of obviously we've seen them already, but they just remind me of like Nick Saban's prime Alabama teams. Like you just know they're just better, Unless they screw up, they're just better. So
all right, well, that's a wrap on our first episode of Gibby Knows Sports. We'll come back probably in the next couple days. We're going to talk some NFL football, the stuff that's going on in the NFL, some of the potential playoff matchups that we might see in the first round. We're going to the Cowboy game on Sunday. They've got the Buccaneers.
Playoffs, baby.
At 7:15, that's the primetime Sunday night game. So Seth and I will be there for that. But thank you guys for tuning in.
Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll post the link.
Like and subscribe.
YouTube channel.
YouTube. We're going to post a lot more content moving forward. Appreciate you guys. Peace out.
See ya.